Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Digital Diplomat. This is Tony Abad, where we tackle issues of cross-border understanding and communication. And today we are going to tackle a very important word that figures heavily when we deal with online communication and the reality that we know that we see online. And we're honored and happy to have with us an individual who's like myself, a host and moderator, a broadcast journalist, and has a long career in dealing with communication. She is the founder and now the CEO of the Public Sector Marketing Institute. It's the other important concept, which is the public sector. How do we bring both trust and the public sector together on the internet and achieve all of this through our social media, through the reality that we now know in this day and age? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Joanne Sweeney. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joanne. I know you have a very busy schedule, but we're honored and we're happy to have you with us.
Tony, it's a pleasure to be here, coming to you from the west coast of Ireland.
Let's go straight to the point of our discussions, Joanne. That word trust that I mentioned, what makes building trust an important agenda in social media? And I focus on both business sector, corporations, and also the public sector. Why is it so important that we establish that trust?
So the whole premise of my book, Public Sector Marketing Pro, and there's a second edition coming out in a number of months, is all based on the concept that trust is the number one currency in the digital age. And without it, you have nothing. You see, the world has changed with the evolution of the internet. And previous to the internet, the major pillars in society and in the world were big business, government, and indeed church. But the pendulum of power has swung into the hands of the citizens. And now we see the voice of the citizen growing, getting louder, and indeed being heard as a result of the evolution of the internet. Is that media, social media versus mainstream media is becoming more of attention, and even journalists are now becoming uncomfortable with the voice of the citizen. So whether you're in business or whether you're in government or public sector, trust is one thing that is going to sustain you, that is going to keep you closer to your stakeholder, your citizen, or your client, because the world has shrunk. And the knowledge that we have is at our fingertips through the smartphone, and the democratization of the internet, the free availability of Wi-Fi, and access to smartphones and smart devices means that we are consuming media at a rate never before. And we are informing ourselves of our truths and what we perceive to be true. So I teach digital communications to a whole host of sectors, and specifically government and public sector. I also teach it to the commercial radio sector in Ireland. And one of the things that I teach is that, you can be anything on the internet right now. I was in Europe, in the European Parliament a number of years ago, about 5 now. And I was doing some work over there, and I had a break of about 2 hours, and I saw that they were launching a report. And this was a European study on media consumption. And there was one line from that report 5 years ago that still sticks with me today, and I constantly quote it. And that is, media is now a commodity, and it is owned by anyone who is willing to create it. And as somebody who also delivers trainings for Google, I understand that the power of search, marketing, and Google being the biggest search engine in the world, and YouTube being the second biggest search engine in the world, is that those people that get to rank number 1 on YouTube, those people that get to rank number 1 on page 1 of Google, understand how the internet works. So if you have a citizen or a customer searching, I want to know, I want to go, I want to do on Google, then what you're finding is that those who are commanding share of social voice or share of search voice in the case of Google or YouTube, are not those that necessarily are those to be trusted. It is those who know how the internet works. So the landscape and the power brokers now are perhaps losing a little bit of their power because the internet and the digital age is handing it over to anyone who has a demand or an intention to progress their own means. And so now the big question is, well, who can we believe? And I believe that's where we are today.
Now, at this point, I wanted to throw a rather controversial question to you, and it has to do with trust in what we see in social media. So social media and the internet somehow democratized our access to knowledge and news, what we see. I mean, it took it away from sort of the mainstream media that we were familiar with as we were growing up, which could be influenced by the powers that be, the power brokers that you just mentioned. But then you have the internet. The internet is a platform, and the platform is managed also by human beings, by people who could also be managed by a new set or new generation of power brokers. So the social media, in a sense, democratizes news that we saw in mainstream, created a new reality for us. I mean, allowed us access to news, but then we start trusting what we see on the screen as news, as reality. Now, here in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia, the issue, of course, is one-on-one. It's like people don't have that much trust in the public sector because of their historical experience. But recently, what we've experienced here in the Philippines is that when you look at history, maybe Joanne, you and I still remember what happened maybe in the 80s and 70s. And it's very clear to me what happened here in the Philippines. But we actually had an election wherein more than 6 years ago, the supposedly or allegedly winning candidate managed to change history, change reality as people saw it on social media. I mean, how can we respond to that or defend ourselves against that kind of abuse?
So the first thing that I would say is, this is what I was leading up to in my first answer to your question. The intentions of the individual, the campaign, the party, the cohort, the grouping is irrelevant. The bottom line is you can achieve great influence and great power and great sway, and you can change the whole narrative. Or in the case of the Philippines, as you say, can you rewrite history? In Europe, there now is a law called the right to be forgotten, where people can delete content about themselves, potentially from court cases or news articles. And again, there's this whole conversation going on, well, who regulates and legislates for the internet if you can publish anything that you want and rewrite history? So where I would say in your question is, and how do we defend the truth? We need the trust brokers and the guardians of the truth to step up. And this is my mission in the world right now as a former journalist and somebody whose job was to seek out the truth in the public interest. I am now back in that job, albeit doing it in my own way, because I have studied the internet, I have practiced the internet, and I am now calling on governments and those in power and in the public interest, in the real public interest, to understand the internet. And you see, they actually don't. And very many are, I would say, responsible for the voids and the gaps. The truth only will rise to the top of the internet if there are people there that are publishing it. And I want to refer to a study. And while I can have my opinions, I also, as a journalist, need to back it up with evidence. And the Reuters Institute and the University of Oxford compile an amazing global study of news every single year, and it's worth looking into. And the most recent study in 2021 had a look at where young people are accessing their news. So TikTok and Instagram are now mainstream news channels for younger generations. And when asked, who do you listen to on those channels for news? The top result, hanging at around 37%, was people of interest, personalities, influencers. So the truth is right there. The reality is now that younger generations are migrating to social media stars for their news, and so then are voting with their smartphones, if you like.
It makes us think about then who do we go to guard the truth? Well, I wanted to ask you, Joanne. I mean, I'm talking about an example of how you could actually lose trust in social media. But as a founder of the Public Sector Marketing Institute and its CEO, and a seasoned media veteran at that, through that long experience, can you share with us a story of how you're actually successful in building trust, out of a crisis or a situation where trust was endangered, but you were actually able to rebuild it or build it through social media?
So this morning in Ireland, we woke up to news of our health service putting in preparatory measures for monkeypox that is now spreading across the world. And this leads me to a health case study. So we're on the back of the pandemic. It's still alive and well, unfortunately. But I want to take you to an Irish perspective and the HPV vaccine. So this is a vaccine for young girls to prevent against cervical cancer. And about 5 years ago, there was a war waging on social media, and in particular on Facebook, by the Regret campaign. And the Regret campaign was, in the main, mothers who were fearful of this vaccine, didn't trust it, didn't trust our health service, and didn't trust the science. This resulted in a serious and a significant drop in the uptake of the vaccine to dangerous levels. And I was taken in kind of about 3 years later to have a look at the analysis of that situation and how it shifted. And about a year into it, the Irish Health Service decided to launch an aggressive and a proactive digital and social media campaign. And when I looked at the analysis, it was very, very clear that there were fake news websites, there were Facebook groups sharing this misinformation that was instilling fear in mainly parents who didn't want to give the vaccine to their young girls. Fast forward 18 months, and the digital campaign and the use of social media and trusted voices. You had young women, you had parents, you had medical experts, you had scientists coming in on the internet and fronting the campaign online, and I saw the mark shift. That experience was used in Ireland over the past 2 years, and we have one of the highest rates of COVID vaccine uptake in Europe, if not in the world. The lessons learned that time were used. And so that case study now of Ireland and COVID-19, I think, is one that is going to be looked at worldwide.
I think COVID-19 and the whole pandemic and the whole vaccination issue, to a large extent, so many people who were isolated in their own homes had to depend on social media, on the internet, for what they trusted to be reality. So it's good. And then going back to what you said, yes, I think there is a call, I think, for people to actively defend the truth. It seems that, well, all those who are well-meaning like ourselves, we tend to be lazy, or we tend to neglect or perhaps not see how important it is to step up and actually be defenders or vanguards for the truth. And I hope that, I hope through your movement and through what you're doing, we can get more people to defend the truth, having seen what can actually be done to alter the truth in social media. Now, I wanted to ask Joanne, when you are speaking to your audience of potential leaders, also those who we hope will be our vanguards and our defenders of the truth, what is your one piece of advice, your one tip that you can leave with them, so that they can, they can watch this program and come away with it with, with a bit of inspiration and a bit of knowledge to fight for the truth?
So the starting point is a commitment to show up online, because without the commitment, there will be no strategy, it will be disjointed, it'll be inconsistent, and you won't have any real impact. And leaders need to lead from the front, and they need to show up online. And I don't think it's enough anymore that leaders hide behind a corporate logo or the logo of their organization. You, when in a role of leadership, whether in business or government, you are that trust keeper, and you have to be visible, because humans are looking for humans. They're looking for the individual voice, not to blame, but actually, as the Irish Health Service said during COVID-19, the people wanted to do the right thing, but they needed the trusted information. And most people do want to do the right thing, but with conflicting views, they don't know where to look, and they can be sucked in very, very easily. So commit to showing up online. Don't worry about the how-to. You'll always find out how to optimize your content, how to show up really well online or during a live stream. But you need to lead from the front, and you need to share that leadership message right across the organization to build a culture of digital first, not digital only, because you need to serve all your audiences offline and online, but you need to have a digital first mindset. Otherwise, the tide is going to bring you out to digital oblivion, and our problems that we are seeing in the world right now are going to be greater.
Okay, so we have to have a commitment to show up here. I wanted to ask you, because I've received so much, I've read and received so much advice, as an aging adult, that that we should actually take a break from social media. In fact, some even advise that you go to the extent of shutting off your Facebook, your Instagram, and so that you sort of take a mental break. But then does that mean we're sort of leaving to to the trolls and the PR practitioners what they're putting out in social media? And should we actually have a responsibility to be here to try and counter that and defend the truth?
So I would say show up with purpose and real intention. And that doesn't mean that you need to be there 24/7. You might be surprised to learn that I have no notifications turned on my phone, because I do not want those digital interruptions.
Right.
So I have a strategy, and I show up with intention. And I also leverage the power of technology to do the social listening for me, so that I don't have to be on the internet all the time. So you can be there, and you don't need to have overwhelm, but then it becomes, after the commitment, it becomes about the strategy.
Right. I think with the commitment, maybe we can avoid the distractions that we see on social media.
Absolutely.
But as a media, as a fellow media practitioner, we do need to show up. And that's, I think, a good piece of advice I've just learned from you today. Honestly, I am inspired, and I hope our audience is also inspired by you. I certainly hope I get the chance to chat with you again, online or offline. It's been a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for making the time to be with us. That was Joanne Sweeney, and we hope to hear more from her in the near future. This has been the Digital Diplomat. We'll see you again for our next episode. And this is Tony Abad signing off for now.